1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, that's how we started it. Welcome back to Country and Cold Cans. Andy's coughing over here, but as always, I'm Logan sitting here with Andy and Kyle. And this week we have another guest on the show. We have my brother and my co-host on Miserable and Reckless, Dustin. Welcome, Dustin.
Hey, fellas. How are y'all?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Andy, I don't know if he's got COVID or not with him coughing like he was a minute ago.
COVID don't exist in Alabama.
Yeah, I'm sure it doesn't. But before we jump into the main thing we kind of got everybody here to talk about and had Dustin guest on today, I did want to bring up one thing. I saw Brian Kelly of Florida Georgia Line released an EP that he called a Wave Pack. I think it was BK's Wave Pack. So I listened to it last night, and then I listened to it again today on my drive home, and it's god awful. Like, there's one song on it that might not be terrible, but if you want a good laugh and want to subject yourself to that, yeah, definitely go listen to it and listen to the first song, Beach Cowboy. He throws out his own, he has a line in there where he says, it's your boy BK. So he throws his own name out there, calling himself a beach cowboy.
Oh, he name checks himself?
Or name checks himself.
Yeah, nice.
It was pretty bad.
Goodness.
Yeah.
So a not as good a version as Kenny Chesney.
Yeah. It's like, take Florida Georgia Line's already kind of like crappy music, but take away the catchiness and the appeal that it has as mindless music to some people, and just like take it down a few notches. And that's kind of what it's a watered down beach EP. This sounds like FGL, but it's trying to be Jimmy Buffett or Kenny Chesney. It's not good at all.
Sounds confusing.
Everything's about beach parties.
Weren't they having like a falling out, or is that another band? Are they?
No, they're back. They never like broke up, but they had a falling out because I think we were talking about. So Brian Kelly, or as he calls himself, BK, he's from Florida, and Tyler Hubbard's from Georgia, and BK is a Trump guy, and Tyler Hubbard was a Biden guy, and Tyler and his wife posted something. I think I have this right. I think it was Tyler and his wife posted something on Twitter, and then Brian Kelly and his wife unfollowed him because they were having disagreements over COVID and over the election. And it kind of was like they've been like best friends since they were in college. But it's like the guy from Florida was on board for Trump, and the guy from Georgia was on board for Biden, and it kind of caused a rift between them.
A little bit of heat of the moment.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. I can't believe that's what they're. I mean, at a minimum, if they've been friends and if they're making a bunch of money together, then just put it aside.
Yeah. I mean, we've all heard the rumors that, like, I mean, you just put it aside and make the money, because, like, we've all heard the rumors about Brooks and Dunn towards the end of their active touring career. The rumors were they didn't even speak to each other when they weren't on stage. So, like, it happens, I guess, when you're around somebody that much. But yeah, I just thought it was completely ridiculous. And, like, then they went for the little high school girl crap where they unfollowed each other on Instagram, which became a story on Twitter, and everybody was following the FGL beef that was around election 2020.
Every time I hear about band drama, I just think of how awful it must have been to been Mick Fleetwood in the 1970s. Having to record with those people as much as they hated each other.
I don't know. I think Mick Fleetwood's band wasn't doing too great until he got all those people in it. I'm thinking he was probably enjoying the ride to the top.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
that's fair. But all right, so we're going to jump into the main topic today. But yeah, so I stole this idea kind of from an episode of Miserable and Reckless. Go and check that out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Amazon, anywhere where podcasts are available, where we did our personal Mount Rushmore of athletes. It's not really objective on who we think is the best, but who made the biggest impact on us. So it's completely subjective, and it's all about what our opinions are, because that's what matters, not what everybody else thinks. That's why we have this show. So to start things off, I'm going to let Kyle take it away with your personal Mount Rushmore of country music artists.
All right. So the four I have selected are, of course, Eric Church. We all know I'm a huge fan. I think what we've said on the podcast previously will explain my feelings to him. He's also a North Carolina boy. Little bump in the charts, I guess you would say. Number two, I'm sure that Logan and Andy also have him, is Alan Jackson. country legend. Wonderful songs. Number 3 are the Dixie Chicks. I'm a huge fan of the Dixie Chicks. Or
you mean the Chicks?
Excuse me. Yes,
Kyle was canceled. Can't say Dixie anymore. We established this 2 episodes ago.
It's like saying the Washington football team. I'll just never get used to saying it.
Yes, they're still the Redskins to me, and they're still the Dixie Chicks to me.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm a huge fan of the Dixie Chicks. And lastly is Gary Allen. I think Gary Allen is like a gateway drug to country music because you can put Gary Allen on with people. The people like, I just ain't listening to country music. You can play anything else. But for the most part, like my buddy Tyler, he hates country music, but he loves Gary Allen. So I think he's just something you can play with people that may not even really like country music, but he's a good listen. So I give him a spot for that.
Solid list. I think we probably will have some in common, but we've all known each other for so long and listened to similar music. So I think that was par for the course. But now to our guest panelist today from Miserable and Reckless, my co-host over there, and also my brother, Dustin. Who's your Mount Rushmore of country music?
Well, I think with the Halifax County reunion we have here, we might have quite a bit of overlap. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So my Mount Rushmore is going to be Luke Bryan, Florida Georgia Line, Kane Brown, and Sam Hunt.
Nice. Wait, you two?
Solid.
No, I'm kidding. Look, those guys can go make money, have fun, but that's definitely not my personal Mount Rushmore. For me, I can kind of run through them pretty quickly and give you some context on them. One, George Strait, and that one's kind of an easy one for anyone who actually enjoys country music. I mean, he's more accomplished than anyone really in the genre. Most number 1 hits ever. He's up there with most records ever sold. I think he has more CMA and ACM nominations than most people have awards. I mean, he's an incredible talent. But for me, my like of him is more personal. In particular, at our school growing up, when you were a junior, you built prom for senior year. And so when we were putting it together, the CD we had on repeat was Blue Color Sky. And we had that going on and on and on. And so much so that eventually the girls made us compromise and have it every other time that you went through the album. So that just always kind of stuck with me. It's a great memory and kind of really endeared me even more to George Strait. I also, like, in our household growing up or like over at my grandma's house, if the ACMs or CMAs were coming up, they were always like, "Oh, best looking man in country music." And
grandma still says that.
Yeah. And we say it in my house now too. I'm always like, "Who's that, Johnny?" And she's like, "That's the best looking man in country music." And frankly, it's true. He's a good looking dude to be 60 something. But it's just little stuff like that stuck with me over the years, and on top of the fact that he's just an incredible artist.
Yeah, stop you right there before we get too far away from it. Andy probably will fight you over that. Who's the best looking man in country music? Because Andy has had a developing man crush on Parker McCollum, and Andy just loves to talk about how good looking Parker is. So Andy might fight you on that.
I mean, when it's just accurate, there's nothing to fight about. I mean, it's just the facts.
Just facts.
Yeah, George Strait is classically good looking. Like, there is nothing, no one can dispute that. I mean, I'm sorry, it's George Strait. Always will be. He's the king.
I never thought we'd be getting in an argument here about which guy's better looking.
That's the quality content you get when you bring me on as a guest. So, I just, a lot of personal reasons, growing up years, and on top of the good music. Next, and I think this is going to end up being all around the table, was Alan Jackson. He's another one that I've always enjoyed. And part of me has like enjoyed even more as I've like moved off to the big city, but it's still trying to remember the small town Southern man roots. I love, we on Miserable and Reckless, we did an episode about songs about me, and I think 2 or 3 of the songs I noted on that episode were Alan Jackson songs. And, he's accomplished in his own right too. He would be in the conversation, even if you were being objective about it. But I just remember having his CDs over the years, and just also another story about my grandparents. I went to see Alan Jackson play in Raleigh with my grandma and my granddad when I don't even know how old, 10, 12 years old. I wasn't very old. So it was a cool experience on top of me just loving his music. Beyond that, I also am a fan and agree with you on Eric Church. In part, he's one of North Carolina's favorite sons, and so that makes me endear to him a little bit, being from North Carolina originally. But I also became a fan of him in part because I liked, or at one time in my life, I liked to engage in what I would call a personal party and sit at my computer and play YouTube videos and music and have a few tasty beers to go along with it. And when I'm like going around YouTube, and back in those days, it was kind of before streaming. So there was a lot of music on YouTube, and you could find new stuff. It's how I discovered the old 97s and all kinds of other bands. But I remember watching videos of him doing the tailgate shows before his show, where he'd go out in the parking lot and play a few songs, and people would gather around. And that's kind of how I started listening to Eric Church. Now he's one that's kind of when I'm like, what do I want to put on? I just kind of go and pick one of his compilation albums and let it roll. I also got to say, y'all on this spot, Logan understands, but Andy and you probably don't know, but Marty Smith, I love. He's an ESPN reporter. I've always been a big time fan of him.
I know him.
And he has a funny story about, so he's buddies with Eric Church. He went to a show years and years and years ago. And he said he popped up into his bus. This is back when he would still hang out after the show and shake hands and stuff. He's popped into his bus and said, "Hi, I'm Marty, and your album Sinners Like Me saved my life." And then that's how they start becoming best friends. So if he's good enough for Marty Smith is where I'm going with this, then he's good enough for me.
Apparently Andy knows him.
Marty Smith started out as a NASCAR guy.
Yeah.
Actually, just listened to him on a podcast the other day talking about Eric Church.
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't mean you didn't know who he was. You probably don't know that I'm a fanboy of him. So that, and then the last one for me is much more recent than all of these guys. I'm going to put Turnpike Troubadours in that group. I'm a fan of those guys just in a way that when I first started listening to them, I never thought I would be. The music is incredible, but the thing that I like most about them is I think Evan Felger is one of the best songwriters out there. And I can put on their albums and I never skip a song. Whereas even with some of the other guys I'm talking about, I'll skip some things. There's some things that I'm kind of I don't really want to hear this, or I'm not in the mood for that. But these guys, I don't really ever skip a song. I know they've only got 4 albums, but they're all solid front to back. And I just think it's a shame with his, substance abuse problems that not only is it sad for him personally, but it's sad for us because there's so much more good music to be made. And I hope that one day they get back out there and they do it. But so to recap, George Strait, Alan Jackson, Eric Church, Turnpike Troubadours.
Well, the good news is it seems like Evan has actually kind of gotten his stuff together a little bit here recently. He's living down in Texas, I believe now, and he was just videoed playing 4 or 5 Turnpike songs with a small group called the Teague Brothers. So I don't know if they're going to get back together, but I've heard some rumors, but you never can tell what to put stock into. But look, if anything could save the last year, it would be Turnpike getting back together. So
yeah.
So I'd be all for that. But as we like to say on Miserable and Reckless sometimes, if you couldn't tell that Dustin and I were brothers before, I'm going to give my Mount Rushmore now. I'm going to give a honorable mention because I do agree with what you guys have said. My honorable mention is Eric Church because for a lot of the reasons you guys have said, like North Carolina boy, and it's his stuff is like he's got very few songs that I skip. I love like his progression as an artist from singing, his early stuff, which some of it was pretty deep back then if you listen to a song like Lightning, but he's definitely, as opposed to his peers like Luke Bryan and even Jason Aldean, he's matured and grown with his music. He's not still singing about, the same stuff he did when he was 26. So that's something I appreciate about him. But getting into my 4 picks, the first one is an obvious one, is Alan Jackson. A lot of people always talk about how George Strait's better than Alan Jackson, and it's a tough competition, but Alan Jackson, in my opinion, is still better than George Strait. Alan Jackson as an overall artist, when it comes to like the fact that he's written so many of his songs, and a lot of them he wrote solo, you just don't see many solo rights in mainstream country music, even in the 80s or 90s. It's normally like, co-writing in a group of 3, a group of 5, or what have you. But Alan Jackson's longevity of just like his career, and then he had that resurgence in the early 2000s. It just so much quality music is out there from Alan Jackson, and let's all be honest here. Who doesn't start tapping into their redneck side a little bit whenever the guitar riff for Chattahoochee comes on? I remember at Andy and I both remember at a buddy of ours' wedding. Like, we all asked for that to come on. Everybody from Running Rapids just started dancing on the dance floor, and some of the girls, they were like, who decided to play this? But
and I remember we were at another wedding, and we requested Chattahoochee, and he said he didn't have it, and we about lost it.
Did you hand him your phone and tell him to hook it up?
Yeah, give me the aux.
Yeah, we were at that point.
Who hired this DJ? He sucks.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, so Alan Jackson, definitely. The other one in that same vein is George Strait. I mean, look, have been listening to George Strait pretty much my whole life. And George Strait is a guy that, just look at his success. He has 60 number ones. He sold millions upon millions of records. He still, to this day, if he decides he wanted to play a stadium show, he could sell it out. And his longevity is even more impressive than Alan Jackson's when you consider that Unwound, his debut record, came out in 1980. And then he had consistent mainstream radio success up until about 2012. That's an incredible run. It's like you have to look over on the rock side of somebody like Tom Petty to even see something kind of similar to that much of a mainstay on the radio within a mainstream format. And so George Strait, they call him the king of country music for a reason, and he has had a big impact on me as well. Like George Strait, you could take his number 2 hits, the ones that didn't hit number 1, and it'd be a better discography than what most artists can put out there as their best. I mean, it's just incredible what he's been able to do. Number 3 is Turnpike Troubadours also, because to Dustin's point, Turnpike is the one band that I agree I don't skip a single song. It's hard even my favorite band, American Aquarium, I skip a handful of theirs. Turnpike, there's not a bad song that they've ever put out. Evan Felker is an incredible songwriter where it's not just like listing things of how country they are. Like he has these narrative songs fit into a 3 to 4 minute short story, basically. That is just, I think he's unrivaled in this. He's this generation's best songwriter, in my opinion. No disrespect to the Isbels of the world, but it's Evan Felker, hands down. And Turnpike, for me, also personally, was one of the big reasons why this podcast even exists. I mean, the fact that I'm even into the Texas, Oklahoma, red dirt country kind of scene that I've gotten into really independent music is really attributed to American Aquarium and Turnpike Troubadours. We've covered that a lot on this podcast. So Turnpike has had probably the biggest impact of the 3 that I've mentioned so far when it comes to how I consume music, what I listen to. So Turnpike is definitely on there. And then pivoting back for my 4th spot to the mainstream, it's a guy from Arizona named Dirk Bentley. Dirk Bentley is a guy who has had a big impact on me just loving country music in general, because the first compilation CD I ever had was I got a burnt version of Dustin's 2003 self-titled Dirk Bentley's debut. And that record still holds up to this day. And if you listen to his first 3 records are fantastic, by the way, but that one still holds up to this day. And there's no way you cannot listen to that and call it country music. I know that we have a lot of pinkies out people in our independent scene that if anything comes from the mainstream, they don't want to listen to it. That's bullshit. Dierks Bentley's put out good music. He's had some misses, trust me. But as a career, nobody has walked that line of commercial and artist better in the mainstream in the last 20 years than Dierks Bentley. So Dierks Bentley definitely has had a big impact on me, and he made it into that fourth spot. So to recap, I had George Strait, Alan Jackson, Turnpike Troubadours, and Dierks Bentley. So like I said, if you couldn't tell, Dustin and I were brothers before. We had almost the exact same list.
Not surprising. Also on Evan Felker, I read one time you were talking about the short story narrative that he actually starts by writing short stories and he eventually distills them down into songs. So he is part of what he does is he's a creative guy. So he writes actual stories and then he'll eventually turn that into music. And that's also why you see, which I also think shows why he's such a good songwriter, how he'll have characters who go throughout multiple songs and it actually makes sense. I've never seen anything quite like it. There's a lot of other talented people like Jason Isbell in the world, but not like Evan Felker.
Not at all. I mean, Evan Felker is, I agree. He's by far, in my opinion, the best songwriter of this generation. And I don't know how anybody could listen to Turnpike. It took Kyle a little while, but Kyle's come around on Turnpike now.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well,
yeah. It took me actually just sitting there and listening to an album, and I was like, let's go to the next album, and then a whole day has passed, and I found myself listening to him for about a month straight. So, yeah, it just took me willing to give, which is like that with a lot of things, which this podcast has helped. Before I started on this podcast, I listened to pretty much the same stuff I listened to in high school. I just never kicked it. But being on the show has forced / encouraged me to listen to other things, which is good because I've found a lot of good music. So, no.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to take you out to Tulsa on New Year's Eve and let you go to Kane's Ballroom and see them play. Because Andy and Logan and my wife and I all did that. And it was actually an incredible time.
Yeah. Hindsight, that was, I'm pretty jealous of that. Because they split up, a couple months after that show, right? Or was it less than a year, right?
It was less than a year, yeah. Because no,
it was 18. Was that 19 or 18?
It was maybe a year and a half after that because that would have been New Year's Eve 2017, so it was New Year's 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
But
then speaking of Tulsa, if the guy that owns the coffee truck that sells burritos happens to be listening, you really need to rebrand your truck to a burrito truck because your burritos are amazing.
Yes, agree.
Definitely agree.
Also, send me some burritos.
All right, Andy, you're up.
Well, we have a lot of crossover between all our picks, but we're not going to have one unanimous winner. So I'll start with Eric Church. He's on mine. He because I didn't start when I was younger. I wasn't a country music fan until I was probably 16. I had my license when I became a fan. And Eric Church and Luke Bryan were the two biggest on the radio. So this would have been probably senior year in high school. Luke Bryan died off for me freshman year of college. So he did not last very long until he went straight dumpster fire garbage. So Eric Church, the one that stuck around. Anytime he ever came around town, we always went to the concerts. And then a second one I'm going to throw in here at the time would have probably been more straight country, but it's Whiskey Myers. They're one of the bands that got me really into. It's one that made me stay in the Texas scene. They get thrown into the country, but pre-Mud, they were a little bit more country than Southern rock. But after Mud on, they're definitely a Southern rock band.
Yeah,
but,
in the Firewater era.
Yeah, because they really, for me, that's a band that I never skipped a song. Mud was has a couple of skips, but other than that, for me, they're a no skip band. The writing's incredible. Their sound is just killer. Just classic Southern rock and country. It's just killer. Then another crossover, Dierks Bentley. And if nobody's ever guessed it, I came up with this name for the podcast by stealing it from Dierks Bentley's EP.
You're not supposed to say that.
Yeah. Not supposed to say that on the air.
Hey, but he can't sue us when we give him credit for it. I think that's how it works.
Andy's very well versed in bird law.
Yeah. Have you been on LegalZoom recently?
Andy's one of those Twitter lawyers.
Yeah.
In the comments.
He's the legal version of WebMD.
Yeah, basically. Exactly. You also don't have cancer, so I'm also WebMD. But basically, I'll reiterate everything that Logan said about Dierks. And also, Dierks was another one of the guys that every time he came to town, we were regulars at his shows at Walnut Creek. He was one of the ones that got me into, I guess, the more of the traditional country. I guess I would consider that more of the traditional style than the Texas scene.
Yeah, his older stuff.
And then for my fourth one's going to be Turnpike Troubadours. That me and Logan both told the story about the life-changing night that we had in Raleigh. But everything everybody said about Evan Felker, because basically took all my ideas for that. But I'll speak to on the band side of Turnpike is I think it was RC said that that one of the things they did with their sound is that when they were first starting out and they wanted to play their own music, they realized nobody really gave a shit. They were just there to dance and drink beer. So they also got the sound that they have. That's where it came from. That people didn't mind them playing their own songs when they had the sound that they have. And then that just stuck with it from their own. And then the rest is history.
Yeah, they have a great mix of like that kind of like up-tempo guitar in a lot of the songs, but they also the fiddle by Nixie kind of makes that band. It gives them a unique sound because like fiddle, it's more prevalent in Texas country, but fiddle is kind of a lost art in country music these days.
Yep. I love that they have a fiddle, and it's largely because love Charlie Daniels, and that was my first concert ever as a kid, and I grew up just loving him. Still loved him through all the way through, and still play him sometimes. But it's the fiddle that sells me on Charlie Daniels more than anything, and I love that there's a fiddle in Turnpike.
It just dawned on me a second ago that all within Andy's block of this, he went from outing how we got our name and maybe getting us in legal trouble to ending it by making a cancer joke.
No, it's not a cancer joke. That's a WebMD joke about cancer.
Man.
Everybody knows you get on WebMD, you definitely have cancer.
Yeah, this is true.
That's true. Doesn't matter what your symptoms are. It's definitely going to end on that.
Yeah, it's like prognosis. You're going to die.
Yeah. Runny nose, you could have brain cancer.
So speaking of Eric Church, he has the first of his triple album releases, I believe, Friday. I think it's April 16th is the first one where Heart gets released, and then Soul gets released April 23rd. So have that to look forward to on a release day coming up this week, actually. So kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, I know he's trickled out a little bit of it. A few of the songs, and I like a couple of them.
Yeah.
I've like sought it out, trying to see, what it's going to be like, because you just never know. But I do agree with what you said earlier, and he has grown a lot. I think he's become a better writer. I think he's also, as he's gotten older, his songs have gotten older with him, and he's not doing like Luke Bryan, where he's talking about hanging out on the beach with college girls. And I think as I've gotten older and now I'm married and have a daughter, like I appreciate that his music's grown in a way that it kind of speaks to me as I'm moving through life, as opposed to a lot of the stuff I hear on the radio doesn't really speak to me. Not at this point in life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for that. See what he's got coming.
Yeah, I am too. Like speaking on people like growing with their music, I'm hoping this isn't going to be a big bait and switch, but your boy TR, Thomas Rhett, released another song today from his upcoming record, and the writing sometimes leaves a little bit to be desired because it's still kind of listy in the mainstream country kind of way, but it's definitely way more rootsy. He's got pedal steel prevalent in the mix on his new single, Country Again. And I'm hoping that maybe he's going to be one of those guys that as he gets older, I mean, he's got 2 kids now, right? I think, yeah, 2. And I'm hoping that he's going to quit trying to be mainstream country, pop country Bruno Mars, and actually lean into a little bit of that early sound he had, where he said that he wrote this whole record listening to a ton of Eric Church, because he said that's when he was back in 2013. That's pretty much all he listened to. So that's I got to say it's a solid song. So definitely, I've given Thomas Rhett credit on this podcast twice now in the last 4 episodes. So I never thought I'd see that, but yeah, check out Country Again. It's a solid offering from one of pop country's worst offenders at times.
You weren't a fan of T-shirt, Logan?
I'm not going to sit here and act like that in the right setting. I didn't find myself bobbing my head to it and singing along. But I mean, if you're looking at it like, is this a good song? It's like, I mean, no.
Or Kiss Me Like a Stranger.
I can take somebody that put out a song that I really liked that came out Friday is that Logan's girl, Taylor Swift's new song. I actually thought that was a pretty solid song.
It was from the Fearless re-release?
No, I've never heard. It was called Mr. Perfectly Fine.
I don't know.
It came out Friday. No, I will check. I don't think it came from that because I've never.
She's re-recording all of her old albums so she can own the masters to them. So I don't know if it was a part of like a bonus track she added.
It came up on it came out from the vault. It came out April 7th. Taylor's version from the vault.
I think it's probably from her re-recording Fearless. And she's kind of added some old songs that she had written back then that she re-recorded and didn't release that she's releasing with it. I mean, look, everybody.
That's what this is.
Everybody knows that I'm a Taylor Swift apologist because I think she's a talented songwriter, even if she does have some misfires with like "We Are Never Ever Ever" getting back together. That song was garbage. But if you listen to her last record or her last 2 records, she's actually has some really good stuff on there. I made Andy listen to that on the way to the beach one time, and I know he was wanting to jump out of the car.
Yes.
Well, like you said, her early albums she wrote when she was like 17 or 18.
Yeah, she was young. I mean, the first 2 records came out before she was 18, I think.
So yeah, she wrote them in high school. So
yeah,
tip of the cap there.
Another thing to watch out for too is the Marfa tapes. John Randall, Jack Ingram, and Miranda Lambert are releasing. It's kind of like a low production songs that some of them she's already released on her last project, but it's going to be a cool. Anytime you get those 3 together, it's going to be a cool project to look forward to. And we're all well documented big Miranda fans on this on this podcast.
Anytime she enters a room, it's a good thing.
I'll join that party.
Kyle and I like Miranda about like Andy likes Parker.
It's just another. Can we all be
Dustin
honest?
likes George Strait.
Can we all be honest for a second? We all agree that Blake Shelton is the most disappointing. I don't know about Dustin, but I know us 3 do. That's just another strike against the man. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, it's just, come on.
I mean, can't argue with you.
Yeah. No disrespect to, what's her name, Gwen Stefani, but it's not Miranda. So.
Don't disagree.
Yep, not at all. But yeah, it's good music coming out. A lot of stuff that's exciting. I know that Tristan Merez that we've covered on here when Ryan was on the show from Miserable and Reckless. We covered his song, one of his latest singles, but he's got a full length coming out in the next few weeks that definitely pay attention to. I think he's going to end up being another one of those Texas guys that makes some noise in the mainstream. So there are a lot of good records to be on the lookout for. And if you haven't already, go check out Morgan Wade's new record, Reckless. Andy, me, and Kyle give that our big stamp of approval because that was a fantastic album. She's got a new music video for Wilder Days that I've yet to watch, but probably will do as soon as get off of this. But check that out. And
I was listening to her today. Still amazing.
Yeah, really good record. But, well, Dustin, we appreciate you coming on for the Mount Rushmore episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, a little bit of a Halifax County reunion, as you said.
Absolutely. That's probably why there's so much crossover.
That's right.
We're rednecker than you.
Yeah. Little shout out to Hardy, which one last announcement. We have a big episode coming out next week of an interview with Rich O'Toole. So be ready to check that out and check out his new single that's coming out, 17 Wild Horses, on April 23rd. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Amazon, pretty much anywhere you look for podcasts, we'll be there. So for this episode of Country and Cold Cans, I'm Logan, sitting here with Andy, Kyle, and Dustin. We'll see you next time.